In fighting games, the backbone of a good cast is individuality. And for someone fresh to the genre, this can come from basically anything. A character's personality, outfit, voice actor, or even lore. The problem is, after a while, when you find yourself knee-deep in technical understanding and tournament play, a lot of these traits that used to be important drift out of focus, and what is left is the mechanical. What makes your character interesting when you're actually playing them. To be fair, most companies understand this. They'll at least try to guarantee that your character's tools give you some form of unique in-game experience when compared to the rest of the cast. And that's great, but where it gets really interesting to me is when these tools weren't intended. So that's what we're looking at today with Street Fighter 4 and its armor cancels. Armour as a term describes a move that allows you to absorb a single attack without going into hit stun. In Street Fighter 4 we see this most commonly with the universal mechanic focus attack, but there are also character specific examples of it too. Balrog's EX Rush Punch, Zangief's EX Running Bear Grab, Abel's Ultra 2, and a whole bunch more. Street Fighter 4 is such an armor-centric game in fact, Capcom felt it necessary to include direct counters to it. Every character will have a unique attribute tied to one of their specials that breaks armor. On top of this we have generic counters which we see commonly across other titles, namely your throws and your multi-hitting attacks. So although armor is very strong, it is not strong without consideration. To understand the cancel part of the term armor cancel, you'll first need a rudimentary understanding of carry cancelling, but we can bang that one out quick. It is the act of cancelling the beginning frames of a move into another move, transferring some of the properties from the first to the second. The most common example of this being Ken's Kara throw, where you'll cancel his forward medium kick into his throw, giving that throw some of this forward momentum. An armor cancel is pretty much just a Kara cancel, but a bit more specific. With this technique you are cancelling a move that has armor into another move. The limitations however are numerous. Firstly, the armor on your attack must start on the first frame, and the opponent must also trigger that armor on this frame. If you meet both these requirements, you'll then have a 5-frame window to cancel into your second move. This means that for the most part, you'll need to input the second move before you even activate the first to be quick enough. What makes it particularly character specific is the fact that on top of all of these limiting factors, the move you cancel into must have a higher priority than the original, which is rare. All of these requirements render the technique niche, but unbelievably unique. So let's look at some examples. As mentioned before, everyone has a focus attack, and that works for this tech, but not everyone has an attack of high priority. Most characters can only armor cancel into their taunt from focus, which isn't practical, but is kind of sick if you're trying to achieve high levels of BM. With probably the funniest example of this being Dan cancelling into his super taunt, then cancelling again into his ultra. Rufus actually has a practical armor cancel with his focus, because for some bizarre reason, his back row has priority. Just in case you don't know, Rufus's core game plan revolves around his dive kick. This has no real height restriction and pretty good frame data. So a lot of your pressure with him is dive kick into throw, dive kick into frame trap, or dive kick into another dive kick. To counter this, what you can do with a character like Ryu is option select your crouching medium punch with throw, meaning you can both break the throw and potentially punish a low dive kick. Rufus can use his armor cancel to beat this option select because the armor will go through the crouch medium punch and the throw tech will be too early. You obviously have a very tight window for this armor cancel to work, but it is a reasonable choice. If they don't trigger the armor cancel, your focus attack will come out, which you can follow up with a backdash on reaction. It will leave you at -11, but at a range in which a lot of characters will struggle to punish without meter. And because it's only -11, it can be a subject to a failure in mental stack management. Basically, the opponent isn't thinking about it, so they're not ready to punish it. You can also hold the focus after a failed attempt, meaning there is some level of mind games on when you're going to release. Alternatively, you could just simply backdash without ever releasing and try to get out of danger. Another really interesting example of armor cancelling from focus attack is with Gen. His stance swaps have priority, meaning you can recover from absorbing a move almost instantly, giving you what is basically a very strict but very good third strike-esque parry. This is really useful in neutral. Building ultra meter by absorbing fireballs and not having to either give up ground with a backdash or potentially put yourself in harm's way with a forward dash is a huge advantage. Once again, however, you've got a 1 frame window to do this. Street Fighter 6's perfect parries for comparison have a 2 frame window, and people still struggle to do that consistently. So it's not easy, and if you fail, you're whiffing a focus attack, because to cancel into the stance swaps, you either need to hit 3 punches or 3 kicks, therefore releasing the focus attack, removing your ability to backdash or forward dash on reaction to a failed attempt. With this tech, you can also of course absorb normals and get punished depending on the attack, but often the risk reward doesn't really work in your favour just due to how strict the timing is. In some matchups, however, it does provide a neat variable for the opponent to deal with. The best example of this is probably versus Dowson. You can absorb some of his long range limbs and score a knockdown or potentially pretty big damage, plus the risk of whiffing from that far away versus him is only just eating a heavy punch. I wouldn't base my entire game plan around this tech, but it can give him enough concern that he'll need to vary button timings, thus giving you room to walk him to the corner. It's basically the same as doing guest DPs, but with more reward and less chance to hit. Eleanor can cancel her focus into Ultra, kind of cool I guess. It allows you to punish what would typically be a safe button, but once again it's a pretty big read and is too strict to be practical, especially because you need to input the Ultra before the focus attack because the cancel window is so small. Now it is time to leave the world of armor cancels with focus attack and look at some armor cancels using special. There are quite a few, so I'm going to cut down the list to only include those that I think are either practical or uniquely interesting. If you want to learn about the complete picture, down in the description I've included a link to a post that will show you everything that's possible. Cancelling EX moves specifically has a couple of interesting quirks about it which we need to understand first. EX specials can only be cancelled into other EX specials, ultras or supers. There are exceptions, but we'll look at those later. Now, if you know Street Fighter, that last cancel option might sound a bit strange because EXs cost 1/4 of your meter and supers cost the entire bar, making it technically impossible. However, due to us cara cancelling the first frame of these EX moves, the meter usage doesn't get calculated, meaning that if we're successful, we still have super available. Let's start with the most practical appearance of this technique, which we can find on Balrog with his EX Russian. He can armor cancel all of these specials, and there are use cases for all of them, but for brevity's sake, let's focus on the most commonly used one, EX-straight. This move is -2 on block, making it unpunishable in a lot of situations. So unlike the focus attack armor cancels, attempts don't come with huge risk. Armor cancels basically just make this move better with no consequence. If you're throwing this move out randomly, expecting the opponent to press, just do the inputs for ultra behind it. Worst case they're blocking something -2, best case you land an ultra because they caught the first frame of startup. You can also get pretty creative with it. My favourite use case is cancelling an EX-straight into an EX-upper. The EX-straight only has 1 hit of armor, making it ineffective against fireballs with 2 hits, but with armor cancels we can blow right through them, and if we use dash upper we can get a full combo after it connects. It can also be pretty useful against characters like Chan or Guile, who have slow projectiles that allow them to follow up with buttons after the fact. However, here we might want to use a dash straight rather than a dash upper because the upper whiffs on crouches. It's also great against meaties. Why randomly ultra on your wake up when you can armor cancel into an EX headbutt? Sure, they can throw you, but on block you're safe, and that sounds like a pretty good deal to me. Goken bizarrely can cancel its EX counter into either Ultra or Super. Now this one is executionally very difficult due to the counter being a backwards DP motion and the Ultra being 2 quarter circles forward, but once again it is just a win-win. If you're going for an EX counter and have the mechanical skill, you might as well add in an Ultra, because ultimately the reward is far better and the risk has not changed from what you normally experience when going for a counter. The only small adjustment you might need to make is for the extended time it takes executing all of the inputs. Outside of that, there really isn't much nuance to it, unlike Jury. She can also armor cancel her counter into Ultra, but she has Feng Shui Engine, which is an activation super, meaning she can convert off a successful armor cancel into huge damage, and it has some pretty fantastic situational applications. A great use case for this is found in the Ibuki matchup. On knockdown, she wants to go for a 50-50 left-right kunai mix-up, which for the most part are unpunishable because of the angle of her jump, causing traditional reversals to whiff. But with Feng Shui Engine, you can actually punish her. You'll still need to guess on which side she's hitting, but the potential's there. As always, there is counterplay, but in terms of limiting her mix-up options, it's a pretty priceless piece of tech. Guy's EX run armor cancels are also pretty interesting. Generally, you'll use his run for safe distance closing and mix-ups with his high-low or stop follow-ups. Baking in an Ultra 1 to each EX run attempt basically just gives you more reward if the opponent mashes, which is pretty huge because typically you're only getting a single hit punish if they do. It does have some limitations though. To do it, you're inputting 2 quarter circle forwards, pressing 2 kicks, then instantly pressing all 3 kicks. So if the armor cancel fails, you're getting the overhead follow up from run, which is fine if that's what you're going for, but it is ultimately punishable, so you don't want to do it all the time. Super, however, is a different story. This move whiffs on crouches, but if the character has a big hitbox, it will connect. More importantly, this super is done with punches, so if I'm against someone like Hugo and pressuring him, and I want to add an EX run in there to get back in or potentially mix, I can just go for an armor cancel super just in case he mashes. And because the punch input doesn't trigger any of the run follow-ups, you get to choose whatever you want to do afterwards. Lastly, I want to finish with Abel, another character with some pretty practical uses. The move you're going to be using for armor cancelling is his EX change of direction. From this we can cancel into any of his other EXs, tornado throw, roll or falling sky. Change of direction into his command throw is actually very good against safe jumps. It's probably his best response a lot of the time. You can even use it against regular meaties, or you could cancel into Ultra 1 instead if you want to get really spenny. Both of these options are undeniably solid, beatable of course, but if you've got the read, go for it. As a character, Abel's anti-airs are, let's say, middling. They can be great with the correct positioning, but against some of the stronger jumping options like Cammy's dive kick, they're often pretty ineffective. EX change of direction is actually in itself a pretty alright anti-air. It can combo into Ultra 1 if landed at the correct height. However, EX Falling Sky as an armor cancel can actually give us better Oki and better damage sans the Ultra 1, making it a nice little optimization for those moments where they hit you on the first frame. Like I said at the start of this section, there are quite a few characters I'm not covering here which you yourself should go explore, but hopefully this gives you a small idea of what's possible. And look, I don't want to overstate how good this tech is. It's hard to execute and even harder to set up, but that's kind of what makes it beautiful. There are a lot of glitches in old fighters, wonderful game-defining glitches filled with personality and unique gameplay that we'll never see again. A lot of people don't like glitches, but I do. If you've watched anything from this channel, probably know that already. However, if I had to critique them, it would be that they can become just a little bit mundane. I'm not excited by the VICC anymore. Maybe the situation around it, but if I stop being someone that's consumed by the hypothetic and instead revert back to just being a player, I see them a lot, and although I enjoy them, they are at this point just another mechanic. Glitches excite me again when they're rare. And I'm not just talking about some stupid softlock glitch, I'm talking about character specific, difficult stuff. The ones you see once in a blue moon that will make you get out of your seat. Street Fighter 4's armor cancels are that for me. They're just as exciting as they were the day I learnt about them all those years ago. And I think that's pretty cool.